Extraordinary Attorney Wu is the charming story of a young attorney on the autism spectrum. She lands a job at one of the country's finest law firms, and every day is a battle to prove just how good of a lawyer she is. As she manages legal cases, meets friends along the way, discovers how to handle conflict in relationships, and even experiences true love, we learn more about her unique perspectives on the world. Wu Yongwu is an autistic child who appears to be nonverbal. But one day she finally speaks after her father Wu Guangho is attacked by the enraged husband of a neighbor. She begins quoting definitions of the assault she had studied from her father's law books and shocks everyone around her. Now as an adult, young Wu begins her first day at Hanbada Law Firm after graduating from Seoul National University at the top of her class. Now senior attorney Jung Myung-sik does not want the awkward newcomer on his team, so CDO Han Sin-young agrees that he can fire young Wu if she is unable to handle her first case. Now attorney Wu is presented with the case of defending her childhood neighbor who is accused of trying to kill her husband. The problem is that even if a plea deal for attempted murder has been agreed upon, Young Wu understands that doing so would cancel the defendant's pension and leave her without a place to live. The cool thing about attorney Wu is that she'll find the random little loopholes to win her cases. So she gets testimony from a medical expert that the husband may have been suffering from an underlying subdural hematoma, which is the reason. The husband passes away, but attorney Wu's little trick works. The defendant keeps her pension and home, and the charge is reduced to assault. On the non-legal side of things, Lee Jun-ho, who is a litigator at the firm, helps Young Woo in her new position by guiding her through common challenges like the rotating door in their office building. And it doesn't help that Jun-ho is pretty cute too. Bride Kim Hwa-young trips on her dress at her lavish Daehyun hotel wedding, revealing herself and her Buddha tattoo. Embarrassed, her father Kim Jong-gu decides to involve Hanbada rather than follow his attorney's advice to accept the hotel's hefty refund. Seon-young agrees to seek compensation of 1 billion won in an effort to surpass their competitor Taesan law firm. This isn't looking good. Now Young-woo believes that Jong-gu can claim special damages because the bride's family will not get a wedding present of land worth 33.2 billion thanks to the botched wedding. She also finds out that the daughter is actually not happy with the marriage and basically agreed due to family pressure. Determined to investigate what actually happened with the dress, attorney Wu and Jun-ho pretend to be a couple and enter the hotel. When Young Woo tries on one of the bridal dresses, Jun-ho is shocked by her beauty and begins to see her in a different light. Later, he gets a wedding worker from the hotel to swear under oath that Hwa dress Young's was changed for one that was looser fitting. Ultimately, Hwa Young, who was the actual harmed party, withdraws the complaint after admitting to her father that she is a Buddhist and the person she's in love with is actually a woman. At the end of the episode, Ta-sume, CEO of Taesan, learns about Young Woo and her talent. A young autistic man named Kim Jong-hoon is seen beating his older brother, who is a bright medical student. The brother later passes away. It is revealed in the autopsy that he was intoxicated and had a suspicious broken rib. The father of these two boys requests Hanbada to handle Jong-hoon's defense. Considering that they're both autistic, Young-woo attempts to connect with Jong-hoon through his love of Pengsu, but he's a pretty difficult case. Later, Young-woo and Jun-ho discover proof that the older brother attempted suicide because of academic pressure. However, his parents completely reject the idea that he was suicidal. During the actual trial, Young-woo is dismissed from the case, and the prosecution comments on her autism and how the case might be biased in favor of autistic people. That's honestly so messed up. Later, Young-woo seemingly tries to hang herself in her office, but a shocked Jun-ho saves her. But don't worry, he very quickly realizes that she was trying to recreate the scenario in the case. Young-woo is an odd cookie. Anyway, she understands that Jong-hoon was actually trying to save his brother from hanging himself. In the final verdict, Jong-hoon is declared mentally incompetent and the charges are lowered to bodily injury. On the other hand, a fed-up Young-woo decides to leave Hanbada. Dong-sam, the father of Young closest Woo's friend Dong Jura-mai, receives a land inheritance worth 10 billion from his deceased father. His older brothers trick and bully him into signing a contract that only gives him 20% of the profits but makes him totally responsible for all taxes, leaving him with a huge debt of 260 million yen. Young Woo accepts the assistance as a favor even though she no longer views herself as an attorney. Some progress is made with the case, but then a neighbor who overheard the brothers intimidating Dong-sam later takes back his account in court. Young Woo comes up with a sneaky plan and tells Jura-mi to stir up trouble at her grandfather's funeral. This causes her uncles to assault her and her father and invalidates the contract. Pretty smart, huh? Now, despite finally having a right to the entire estate, Dong-sam settles for equal parts once his brothers apologize. Meanwhile, Jun-ho is encouraged by Jura-mi to admit his feelings for Young Woo, and he is confused about what to do. We also learn that Myung-seok has still not processed Young-woo's resignation because he knows her heart's still in it. And guess what? Attorney Woo does end up rejoining. Hanbada is employed by ATM maker Iwa, who alleges that Jumbang, a competitor, has stolen their invention. Meanwhile, Jumbang asserts that it is an open-source design that Iwa is seeking to falsely patent. Together with her cunning but talented co-worker Kwon Min-woo, Young-woo leads the investigation. Now, in order to demonstrate that the technology existed before Iwa's patent, Jumbang begins searching for the last ATM from a company that no longer exists but had an identical design. The induction does get lifted, but Iwa has already seized control of Jumbang's contracts and destroyed their business. Attorney Woo feels guilty about the whole case since she knows her client was in the wrong. On the other hand, Ta-sume is running for the Minister of Justice, and rumors about her having a child out of wedlock begin to spread. Young-woo and her co-worker Choi Soo-yeon become deeply involved in the defense of North Korean defector Jae Hyang-sim. She was detained 5 years ago when she demanded money from a violent debtor, but she escaped to care for her little daughter, and has now come forward to take responsibility. Later, because of a drunken misunderstanding, Min-woo informs Soon-yeon that Jun-ho has feelings for her. Coming back to the case, Young-woo confronts the doctor who examined one of the women involved. The doctor acknowledges his prejudice against defectors, and a whole new perspective on the situation is brought to light. Now in court, Young-woo argues that the defendant would be charged with a lesser offense under North Korean law, but Hyang-sim admits that she planned to obtain the money at whatever cost. Young-woo and Soon-yeon sneak into the judge's office while the jury is deliberating and make one more request for mercy. In the end, despite receiving a unanimous verdict of 4 years in prison, the judge instead convicts Hyang-sim to probation due to her sincere admission of guilt. It's another day, which means another case. The idea of a highway passing through Sodiak-dong has the locals of the area mad. The leader of Sodiak-dong persuades the Hanbada team to visit their charming little area, and so the attorneys decide to take on the case. But this case is going to be difficult as hell because Taesin, led by Ta-sume herself, is appointed as opposing counsel. We learn that Sume is actually Attorney Woo's mother who abandoned her even before she was born. Young-woo's dad accuses Han Sin-young of using his daughter as a pawn in her competition with Sume. Meanwhile, the romance between Jun-ho and Young-woo begins brewing, but both are unsure of what to do. Later, Young-woo's dad reveals to her that Hanbada's CEO was his class fellow in college, and she hired Young-woo at his request. The morally righteous Young-woo becomes extremely hurt and decides to leave her home. Remember the cunning attorney Min-woo? Well, as if Young-woo's life already wasn't going downhill, he decides to make an anonymous post about nepotism at Hanbada. And the cherry on top is that he clearly mentions attorney Woo. Jealous much? Soo-yeon proves her friendship and stands up for Young-woo in front of Min-woo and the rest of the company despite rumors of nepotism. While all of this is going on, the case isn't looking too good for Hanbada either. Taesin has already persuaded locals to sign consent documents for construction by bringing up the possibility of increased compensation. Taesin floods the town with interns to gather signatures, since the judge will dismiss the case if the majority of the people agree. Young-woo is then given a job offer by Sume at Taesin, which further irritates Min-woo. Young-woo goes home to her father and tells him that she's switching over to Taesin, but what he reveals shocks her. He finally discloses that Sume is her mother. Young-woo loses it and collapses. Later, as she recovers, her father reveals the entire truth to her. He and Sume had been law school sweethearts, but she had rejected him when she became pregnant, so he left to raise Young-woo by himself. Just as he's telling her everything, she gets one of her crazy epiphanies. Young-woo stops construction and unites the village after learning that Sodiak-dong's beloved hackberry tree was blocked from being recognized as a natural monument. This meant that it had to be legally protected. After winning the case, Young-woo heads over to Taesin and reveals to Sume that she is actually her daughter. Sume becomes overwhelmed by emotions and is unsure how to process this news. And with that, our recap comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.